This episode of Test Drive is brought to you by Elmec and their EVDuty Smart Home Charger. Back in the winter, I had a brief date with the 2022 Hyundai Ioniq 5, a new electric vehicle from the South Korean manufacturer. And since it was during the winter, it gave me an idea of how that vehicle might handle the extreme cold here in Canada, which was really important because this 2022 Kia EV6 all-wheel drive long range is being tested during a heat wave. So we have quite a difference in temperatures, but at least it allows me to see how both vehicles can operate under the varying temperatures that we have here in Quebec, because one of the major issues that I found that came with the Hyundai Ioniq 5 was the lack of a rear wiper, which this Kia also suffers from. As well, both vehicles use these pop-open door handles. Now luckily on our mid-range trim here, they're not automatic, so you have to push them in, but the automatic ones that I drove on the Hyundai Ioniq during the winter, they froze open and they were stuck open the entire time I was driving it on the highway. The final thing that I wouldn't have known if I hadn't driven this during the winter is the location of the charging port. It's pretty much on the back of the vehicle, right at the back quarter of the side, which could get gunked up with a lot of snow and slush depending on how much severe weather you're driving through, meaning when you go to plug it in, it's going to be kind of a gross experience. But luckily there is no snow today, even though I would kind of like it. It's pushing about 30 degrees here with a lot more in the humidity, so it is a bit toasty. Now this vehicle as configured is about $55,000 Canadian, about $51,000 in the States. They don't quite add up though. In the States this is a wind trim with the e-all-wheel drive. And one of the major differences you get with that vehicle in the States is ventilated front seats. In order to get that with the Kia EV6 here in Canada, you have to go up to one of the GT line packages, which this vehicle doesn't have. This is right in the middle of the offerings here in Canada. But as we're seeing with any of these generation of electric vehicles, all-wheel drive is a must, especially here in Canada. So to talk about how the batteries and electric motors work, I'm going to pass it over to James.
All right, thanks, Niall. I'm James from Technically Cars, and we're going to do the engine specs with you. So we have two motors, front and back, since it's a four-wheel drive car. You have the front motor at 74 kilowatts and the rear at 165 kilowatts. The horsepower and torque is 320 horsepower, 446 pound-feet of torque from a 77.4 kilowatt-hour lithium-ion battery. This one comes with 441 kilometers of range, level 2 charging from 10 to 100% in 7 hours and 10 minutes, 350 kilowatts if you're going to do 10% to 80%, and that does it in 18 minutes, which is pretty good in my opinion. So this trim of the Kia EV6 is the mid-level trim. You have these kind of useful but not useful kind of rear wing lights on the back that light up the back of the door and like a little bit of the side paneling, but not the charge port. So when you're charging at night, it's not exactly practical. So I call that good, not great. You have no front trunk because of the motor in the front. So you have your interior mix of synthetic leather and cloth heated front seats. You have your heated steering wheel, which is super important here in the Quebec winters, and if you live in Canada at all, you need that, trust me. You also have your dual 12.3-inch screens and dual zone climate control, and you have navigation and plenty of interior space. You'll notice once we get into the interior, there's no center stack in the rear, so you can kind of move side to side, which is super nice and very, I think it just makes it more comfortable overall. All right, we'll talk a little bit more about the interior and the interior features once we do a road test, but for now I'm gonna throw it back to Niall.
Thanks, James. We'll be meeting up with him to do the road test in a little bit. But one of the things that I noticed when I saw this vehicle first is this shape is pretty similar to a lot of the other vehicles on the market in this EV segment. Things obviously like the Ioniq 5 because it's the cousin vehicle of this, but if you take a look at things like the Jaguar I-Pace, the Mustang Mach-E, even the Volvo C40 or the Polestar 2 or the Volkswagen ID4, they all have this similar side profile of a squared off back end that kind of slopes down and gives you more of a fastback look to your compact crossover. So a lot of the vehicles today are following the same trend, which sort of makes sense. But let's think about the Volkswagen ID4 that we drove. Now, if you get the Pro all-wheel drive without the appearance package, you're looking at $49,995, which is about $5,000 less than this Kia EV6 the way it's configured. Now, it has a 77 kilowatt-hour lithium-ion battery, so just a tiny bit smaller than the EV6. Now, you only get 394 kilometers on paper, but your driving style will change that, so it could be pretty similar. But I think the biggest technical difference between these two vehicles is the Volkswagen ID4 only can charge up to 135 kilowatts on the DC fast charging system. Also, the performance is quite a bit lower on the Volkswagen ID4, 295 horsepower and about 224 pound-feet of torque. Very low numbers for an electric, but if you're thinking about how these compare to a traditional compact consumer crossover, it's not bad. Now, the other vehicle that we drove relatively recently that also shares a similar profile to this was the Mustang Mach-E. Now, you have to go with the base model to select with the standard range, so the 70 kilowatt hour battery pack, so about the same, a little bit less than this. You do get a lot less kilometers on paper, 360 as it is rated, but you do get the all-wheel drive system, which is a nice plus. Now with the Mach-E, you do have 150 kilowatt DC fast charging, so again, faster than the Volkswagen ID4, but still not nearly as quick as we have here on the Kia. Now the power numbers are sort of split between the Kia and the ID4. You only get 265 horsepower with the Mach-E at that configuration, but you get 428 pound-feet of torque, which is pretty good. But I think you're going to benefit a whole lot more if we take the Kia EV6 on the road. We're going to talk about how it performs, drives, and handles, talk about the energy economy, and everything else that you need to know if you're in the market for a 2022 Kia EV6 all-wheel drive long range. Let's talk a little bit about our energy economy before we get into the true driving experience of the Kia EV6, and the numbers might be surprising to you. We completed the 100 kilometer test loop in this vehicle in 16 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers, or about 130.9 US miles per gallon equivalent, which is the best that we've tested for an electric vehicle so far. And I had that in sport mode, not that it makes much of a difference. The thing is though, the most recent vehicles we've done have more or less all been done in the winter. So something like the Volkswagen ID4 has been the worst electric car that we did for fuel economy, or energy economy rather, 26.5 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers, or 79 US miles per gallon equivalent. The Mustang Mach-E, quite a bit better, 19 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers, or 110.2 US mpge, and that was fall kind of things, you know, early fall. So similar temperature to this, where it's blisteringly hot out now. So overall, this did extremely well for a compact crossover for all-wheel drive in hot temperatures. Pretty impressed with it. But James, what do you think about the exterior and interior? That's where you got to live with when you're driving this car. How do you like the look of it?
I think it just looks a little bit more sporty than like its sister car, the Ioniq 5. I think that it's maybe slightly more lower, and I'm feeling the bumps a little bit more. It's crazy to me how you can have the same drivetrain and then just a completely different take on a vehicle like this.
No, it's true. And you look at what Hyundai's doing with their newest N prototype for their Ioniq. Like, that thing is super cyberpunk, very tech forward. And this, I like the look of it. This is a little bit more conservative, more in line with what Kia is offering with their other vehicles. But you're right, it does feel sportier, and especially with that rear end, the fact that you've got a bit of a lip on that might help when it comes to winter driving. Maybe it's not going to get so gunked up with snow and slush as you're driving around. So it depends on what you're going for with your look. But the Ioniq 5 definitely more squared off, a little bit more cyberpunk, and this, I do like the sportiness of it.
I would also take a rear wiper though. That does.
But it does feel like this car was more designed for the California world, where it's nice and sunny out most of the time and you don't have to worry about things like that, which is a bit of a bummer. Like the door handles, they get frozen in the winter if you're using the automatic ones. Exactly. And the back end, you know, there's some small things that I think in this specific market might be a bit of a bummer. With the 441 kilometers or so with range, I mean, it's still pretty good. And I mean, we're looking at 356 right now is what the car said. I haven't done a whole lot of long-term driving with it. We're in town. We're also limited to, unfortunately, with this specific press car, with the mileage we can do. But, you know, if you're doing longer-term trips, you know, you want to go on a road trip, I think it's doable. And as the infrastructure gets better, if you're going to Ontario, then you'll have a little bit more chances to charge it up than you do now. But it depends on what you're looking for in a vehicle. I mean, the fact that it's got all-wheel drive, though, you do have a little bit more control in the winter, which I think is ideal for a situation like we have here in Quebec.
Exactly, yeah.
So I'll take it for a quick rip here just to get the performance. Oh yeah, that's good. Yeah. I mean, nothing has been as good as the BMW i4 M50 that I drove, but it's still very good, and especially for a consumer vehicle like this. That's what we talked about with the Volkswagen ID4, a little lackluster. Depends on what you're going for. So you do have the power with this if you want to get it up to speed, and maybe you got to pass some slower traffic. You've got ample amount of torque.
No problem.
No
at
problem with
all.
it, right? And it feels good. So, I mean, it's funny. I was watching a commercial the other day for this vehicle in the States, and Kia said that it's faster than a Porsche Cayenne, which it's not in the same size segment. It's not in the same luxury class segment either.
Interesting.
But it's an interesting comparison. I don't know if people in the market for a Cayenne are going to now consider the EV6, but maybe it's working for Kia in the US, but still, I mean, you get the performance out of it. I think it's good.
If you have Cayenne money, though, I feel like you're gonna want the Cayenne.
Probably.
But still, it's enough for what I think Hyundai and Kia are going for.
Yeah.
With it's affordable, it's quick. Well, affordable is it's in that
relative,
range.
yeah.
It depends. It really does depend on the trim. This one is, I think we said 55 in the 55,000 range.
Right about there.
So it's okay. I mean, not everyone is going to be able to afford it, so not everybody's going to like break down the doors to get this model. But maybe in the future, when things start to level out with prices and stuff, these things will sell like crazy. I think even Kia's having a hard time keeping them now.
Well, and I'm actually surprised that we have this car, because I had it booked a few months ago, and the mileage restrictions on the press cars were very strict. So I knew it was going to be maxed out, and they surprised us here on the press fleet. They brought 2 new vehicles on different trim. The other ones were the top end GT package 2. So at least we have a chance to be able to drive it this time. But yeah, people are definitely getting into it. And one of the things that is nice about it is the overall space. I'm sitting here. If I was sitting beside myself, either side of the back seat, I would fit, which is something that I don't usually find in especially a compact crossover, but I can fit behind me. I do have a little bit of headroom in the back seat as well, which I don't typically find. And because this is an EV dedicated platform, there is no transmission tunnel in the center like James mentioned. You've got extra space back there, and the trunk is humongous. So you've got tons of good going on with the inside of this. Maybe some of this is recycled material. I do find a lot of it, though, is plastic. A lot of hard surfaces on the inside here, which doesn't give it a premium feel. I suppose Kia isn't really marketing it as a premium vehicle, but when you bring the Cayenne into the mix, I mean, you kind of expect a little bit more than hard materials, but still, I mean, it's still a very functional vehicle. It's comfortable. We're both sitting in here. It's smooth, it's quiet, we've got enough space. I think that overall, if you're in the market for this type of vehicle, you'll be pretty happy. It's got a lot of things that we look for when it comes to an electric vehicle. We have different brake force regen with the paddles. We've got scheduling for the HVAC system, so if you plug in and always leave at the same times, you can schedule things through there. And if you go up to one of the higher trims, you do have the vehicle to load system, which allows you to offload battery power to power electronic devices. There's no one pedal driving with this, which I don't know if you've driven any cars like that. I don't like them.
I think the Ioniq, it doesn't iPedal have that. Let me try.
Maybe.
Let's test that. Why? Here. Is it going to come to a full stop? I think it is.
Oh wow! So no foot on at all.
Yeah. So for that to happen, you have to have max regen on, and then you'll get a little green thing here.
Oh yeah, iPedal.
iPedal.
Okay.
So I think the Ioniq, it's the exact same thing. It just kind of shows it
differently.
Maybe differently. Yeah, but it's nice. But I find that, or at least it takes a lot to get used to that much brake force. For me, like I find I'm gonna give people headaches, including myself.
Yeah. So I mean, if you want one pedal or not, essentially you've got the options here, which is nice. Which again, for me, not so much, but I like the option, and that's what I always say when it comes to any vehicle. Like the more option that you have as a consumer, then the better it is ultimately for the buyers out there. So I think it's good to have some options with this.
So let me ask you, how do you find the build quality versus like a Tesla versus a Hyundai? For me, I feel like Hyundai and Kia have so much more experience mass producing EVs, or any car in general, that the build quality by default is just slightly better.
Oh yeah, and I mean, we've talked about it quite a bit on our show too, is the Koreans have improved that significantly in the last 5-10 years. I mean, they've gone from one of the manufacturers to avoid to being really one of the best manufacturers when it comes to anything. I mean, everything they've done so far, whether it's a regular gas vehicle or an electric, has always been really good. And you can see on the camera, we're going through like a testing ground here on the road. It's really bad, and the car eats it up very well. I mean, you really don't feel it. The camera is going to show a little bit more than we're actually experiencing. But yeah, there's no rattles. Everything's assembled very well, and they do it in a thoughtful way that makes sense to the end user. So I've been very impressed with the build quality overall. And I mean, that's the one thing that Tesla struggled with for years, is they just can't build the cars to the quality that people expect at that price point. And then you get something like this at $55,000 and it's built very well and it makes sense. It's going to sell incredibly well.
Yeah, I think that Tesla will get there one day, but right now Kia and Hyundai are kind of leading the EV charge. They're leading the next generation of cars to, you know, because of their experience in just mass producing. It's nice to see, and it's nice to see them adopting it too, because I thought I would always be somebody who loved like the gas-powered car, you know, but as soon as I started driving an EV, that changed.
God, especially with the gas prices too, right?
Exactly.
It helps a whole lot when gas is $2 per liter. It's nice to have something that costs way less, which has been nice. I think overall, if you're in the market for the EV6, this is definitely a vehicle to consider. We talked about some of the comparables. You know, each vehicle offers a slightly different experience, so they do cater to the right buyer. So somebody who's looking at this has some good options out there, and I think you're going to be pretty happy if you go with it.
Yeah, I am one of those buyers in the market right now, so this is super good to see. And it's honestly driving this one, because I have driven the Ioniq 5 and I've driven the normal base Ioniq, just the normal sedan that they had of like 2019, 2018. It's making the decision a little bit difficult, if I'm being honest. Like, they're so close but kind of different at the same time that for me it's really going to come down to like exterior preference and interior preference, because the drive is so close. The Kia EV6 is slightly faster, and I kind of like the center console here a little bit more. I know the Ioniq 5 moves, and I don't think this one does.
This one's like, this makes a little bit more sense. If you've driven something like the Niro EV, this feels familiar,
right?
Whereas the Ioniq, it's a little too crazy. Crazy is maybe the wrong word, but they're really thinking outside the box. And
they're doing open concept kind of thing.
For sure. So some good options overall, but you know, as we always say at the end of these videos, if you have any questions, you can let us know in the comments below. You know, I do try to get back to everybody that I can. James will tell you where you can find him.
Yeah, so you can find me. I'm relatively new to the YouTube scene, but I'm trying to get more experience, and I really appreciate the opportunity. So thank you very much for having me.
Thanks for coming out.
You can find me at Technically Cars on YouTube and Technically_Cars on Instagram, where I post behind the scenes or just whatever random stuff. So check it out. Let me know what you think, and let me know if you've seen me from this video. That'd be really cool.
And we'll put a link in the description as well. I think we can put it in the top corner, right side screen as well, so you can get the link there. But thanks for watching, and until next time, take care.